Yeah, totally.
So a little pivot. So your art might spark curiosity in viewers, right? About both art and the science or the ocean science that you're, whatever it is, the research that you're showcasing it. So how do you hope your audience engages with your work? Or what do you hope they get out of it?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? Like audience engagement, because sometimes we can create pieces which are where you have the audience completely in mind, and um, I think I'd be lying if I said everything um, I do um, is completely devolved of the audience. I think when it comes to songwriting, that's definitely something that's for me. But for example, the piece that I submitted for the Under the Sea exhibition, First Contact, when I remember earlier iterations of it, I actually didn't have the voices from the archives of Swansea as the whales. What I did, I created the introduction. No, what did I do? No, sorry, it was the other way around. So originally, so in the piece, it begins with a voiceover where the narrator says something along the lines of, we've managed to first communicate with whales for the first time ever. It's setting up the actual archival footage of the people from Swansea talking about the impact of bombing on the Second World War, how that is supposed to mimic this idea of the potential impacts of acoustic air guns on the whales. But originally, the piece, I didn't have that introductory bit. I just like kind of, it started with just this the sound of the air guns and then these voices. But then for me, that was obviously something that when I was like, well, if the audience hear that, they're not going to have any idea. Now, of course, they still won't know unless they read the kind of blurb that it's from those actual archival interviews with people talking about the bombing impact on the Second World War of Swansea. But having that thing at the beginning, at least kind of that kind of fictional thing, it sets it up. And so that was definitely a purposeful point where I thought, actually, if I just leave it like without that, it's too abstract and the audience won't have a clue. And so I think it's stronger for that. So definitely, I think, and I suppose art science collaboration has many purpose. One of them is to communicate science to the public.
Yeah.
One is to just for the point of seeing what happens when you put artists and science together and the knowledge that is produced from that collaborative effort without even the intention of taking it to the public. That in itself has value, whatever's created. But if you do have the purpose of then displaying it to the public, I wonder, I don't know, whether there's more of a responsibility to make it make sense to the public. I don't know. It's an interesting question. I don't have an answer. At the end,
Sometimes art
art's
does,
art.
yeah, it does sometimes think about the viewer and
Yeah,
sometimes it doesn't, right? And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But it's good to know because that for
yeah,
me, at least personally, for the sound piece that you submitted, um, I'm a visual person, and so audio sometimes is a challenge just by itself for me. So the fact that it had the text across to kind of read as you listened in certain areas really helped me, and I kind of had to listen to it a couple of times. And once my brain made the connection between the two, and once I kind of like paid attention to that introduction, like I feel that for me, it definitely was really impactful. And in a way, I don't know if this was behind or not. In a way, it was kind of comical because I was like, I could totally picture like the whales underneath the ocean just having like this like conversation. And it's also very, like impactful because of the audios that you're taking. It's like a real archive, right? So then you kind of think about it like, um, brings in some sort of empathy, right? It's kind of hard for people to sometimes empathize with other humans, more so with other animals that sometimes they don't ever get to see. And so I thought that was a very clever way of doing it.
yeah. And I think voice is really important because, like you said, sometimes when we hear like something really abstract, it's difficult to develop that empathy. But once you hear a human voice, you're like, okay, um, I can kind of understand that. And funnily enough, I added the subtitles after doing a few early kind of showings of it, and I was like, because the people sometimes because the quality, I think those were recorded in the 1970s, so the audio isn't great. But then also they're speaking, some of them with quite strong Swansea Welsh accents. So then I was like, okay, when I played it to non-native speakers from the UK as well, they were like, okay. So I added the subtitles for that. But yeah, it was amazing. And interestingly enough, I just went through the archives at first. There was a lot, obviously, I didn't make it. But it was amazing how some of them just kind of were perfect. Like they talk about this idea of the schools, and I was thinking of schools of fish, and then I was thinking of talking about the water being blood red and all these kind of. There was a lot already in the archives. It was kind of just like it's as if it was kind of made for the piece. So that was just a matter of looking through archives and finding these pieces. But I think it's interesting the comedy bit. I do like to add. I did another sound station called Mirrors, and it's about the journey of the minke whale from Antarctica to Namibia, and I used like the protagonist is like this young woman whale, Mina the minke whale, and I like adding a bit of comedy into things because I think sometimes I think that's just my personality. I like I don't like doing something that's so depressing all the way through. But like you said, I think it builds empathy. But I think there's nothing wrong with being a bit playful as well because however, you still, still people, I had, because I did surveys afterwards and I had some comments like, oh, which I thought was really interesting. I'm trying to write about it now, but there was some comments like, um, for art science, this is too childish, having a whale's voice. This should be for children or something like that. And I was like, yeah, it should be for children, but it also should be for adults. There was also loads of comments which like, oh yeah, this is, but those comments which were focused on the idea that art science always needs to be serious and it always needs to, be abstract and it needs to always belong in a very a really serious gallery and stuff like this. I don't know. I think some of the best pieces of art I see are ones that have made me laugh, and those are the ones that stick with me. I remember last year I was in London for a conference, and I went to the Hayward Gallery, and it was an exhibition. I can't remember what the theme was, but something like climate change. We're all doomed, or something like this. And then the piece that I really remember, I know it was like, oh my god, it was great. There's, don't get me wrong, misery can be beautifully made as well. But there was this one piece where they were she interviewed the artist, loads of kids about these big climate change questions. And the kids were probably like, I don't know, 6, 7 or 8. And the answers they gave were hilarious, but also really profound. And to me, I was there laughing, but then, so I think comedy can be a really effective tool in these kind of things. Cause like, I don't know how if you have an exhibition, do serious stuff as well, but it can't all just be serious.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's just the way the human mind works too, right? Can't be all doom and gloom.
Yeah. Oh, exactly. Because, you just leave everyone depressed then. And like, they might just have a defeatist attitude then and just be like, well, we're fucked anyway. There's no point doing anything about it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's not what we want at all.